Hey everyone, welcome to another stream. I hope you guys are doing great. It is Thursday, so we're streaming again, and we're going to be talking about all sorts of stuff. The real estate world is on the brink. And you're going to ask, well, what brink is the real estate world on? And my reply would be like, I don't know, everyone that you can imagine. There's been major shakeups with the Fed, economic data, interest rates, realtor commissions, inventory. Just about everything that you can possibly think of is getting shaken up in the real estate world. So we're going to go over a couple different things today. We've got two articles for you. And one of them is going to be talking about, are we looking at a crash or are we looking at a real estate boom? What's going to happen? And the other thing that we're going to talk about today is the recent changes to real estate commission. We touched on this a little bit last week. I found a really good article from MSNBC that kind of summed it up quite well. So we're going to be looking at that as well. Of course, at any time, if you guys have any questions about anything real estate related, whether that's something that's going on in your life, if you're looking to buy or sell a home, if you've got a question about a property or something like that, put it in the chat. I would be happy to do my best to answer it for you. And also do me a huge favor, throw a like on the video. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. Helps out the channel, helps out my stream, and it's absolutely free. So the housing market's on the brink, and we're going to start talking about what brink that is. So, if anybody out there has been sort of paying attention to the economy and the real estate world, you know that it's really been kind of wild lately. And, the real estate world has been pretty crazy ever since really the COVID pandemic. But in the last about 6 months, it's even gotten more wild, especially with kind of all this uncertain economic data. We were looking at a potential of a recession, which we still kind of are potentially looking at. We've had economic data that's all over the place. We've had different reports with CPI and unemployment, and all that's going on. And it all boils down to a lot of uncertainty. And the current real estate landscape they're in could be on the brink of a crash, could be on the brink of an explosion and a boom. We're not exactly sure. So we're gonna get started with the first article. Thanks everyone for being here, and I hope you guys enjoy everything. Hey David, thanks for joining. It's great to see you here. Hope you enjoy. Chime in at any time if you've got any comments or questions. So we're gonna get this up on the screen. There we go. So this is from Narada, and actually Narada Real Estate Investments is quickly becoming one of my more favorite outlets to get real estate related news from. I don't notice a whole lot of bias either way. They are sort of investment property finder. So if you're someone looking for an investment property, that's kind of what they do. They specialize more in that as opposed to, residential and consumer. But they put out some really, really good stuff. So as you can see, the title of the stream tonight was inspired by this article. Is the housing market on the brink in 2024? Crash or boom? Which, we don't know. This came out August 21st, so just yesterday. It's really, really recent. And so let's get into it. A common question on many people's minds is whether the U.S. housing market will crash again. And this is a common question, I feel like, especially in the world of YouTube, right? As we know, this is no secret that, kind of doom and gloom and blood and guts get headlines. So a lot of people on YouTube like to talk about how the market is always it's imminently crashing. It's always about to crash, right? And we have we real estate agents and real estate professionals, we have a name for those people, and we call them crash bros. So that's something that we hear a lot about. The market's going to crash. Is it going to crash? And of course, that trickles down to the consumer. So what ends up happening is then when I meet a client or someone or talk to a friend about real estate, they're like, oh, I keep hearing that it's right for a real estate crash. And at the end of the day, nobody really knows what's going to happen. I've gone over a ton of times why I don't think there's going to be a real estate crash. If anybody wants to fight me about it in the comments, let me know. I'd be happy to tell you why I don't think there's going to be a crash. But if you think there is going to be a crash, let me know. Put it in the comments, and we can go at it. So let's continue on. To address this concern, it's essential to consider various expert analyses and economic indicators that provide insight into the future of real estate. Is the housing market on the brink in 2024? Crash or boom? The forecasts show that the housing market in 2024 is expected to continue grappling with high home prices and elevated mortgage rates, which have been a significant barrier to homeownership for many aspiring buyers. The average 30-year fixed mortgage rate is hovering between 6.5% and 7%, significantly higher than the historical lows experienced during the pandemic, underscoring the continuing affordability crisis. And this is something that I've heard from a lot of different kind of data-driven outlets where it's like, yeah, get ready. We are going to have these high rates. We're going to have these high prices. That's just the way it is. Again, I want to preface this, and especially that last statement, with something that I talk about all the time. Real estate is hyper local, right? So I am in the greater Los Angeles area. I'm in a town called Claremont, California. I'm about 35 miles east of downtown Los Angeles. And just because of what I experience or my anecdotes doesn't mean that's what you're experiencing, which is why I've got this ticker at the bottom. I want to know where you're watching from, because where you're watching from is certainly going to have a different market than where I am right now. So a lot of the stuff that we're talking about is sort of this like 10,000 foot level analysis and sort of summation of what I'm seeing, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's what's happening in your area. So if you have questions specifically about what's going on in your neighborhood or neck of the woods, put them in the chat. And real quick, David, you're exactly right. The crash bros did not call the boom in 2019. And the funny part is a lot of the crash bros have been saying that it's going to crash for like 4 years, right? They thought COVID, there was going to be a crash. We could go back even further. People were calling for a crash back in 2018. They thought, COVID was going to crash the market. We thought, oh, for sure, 2020 is COVID pandemic is going to crash the market. It didn't. It did the absolute opposite. Then they thought in 2022, when interest rates shot way up, oh, this is going to crash the market. Everybody's overspending for homes. Interest rates are too high. It didn't. And then again in 2024, they've been talking about how, oh, now it's going to crash. And certainly it hasn't. Some areas have receded a little bit in pricing. A lot of the pandemic boomtown areas, which will actually be hit on in this article a little bit. So we've talked about this a little bit before. So your areas like Boise, Idaho, Austin, Texas, areas of Florida, other areas of the South and Southeast, those areas are a little bit ripe. They have a little bit more inventory, a little bit, I don't even want to say an oversupply, but they have a higher supply of properties. And that could lead to certainly a little bit of prices receding a little bit. So yeah, crash bros love to continually be wrong is, I guess, what we can take away from that, right, David? So according to Redfin, in July, existing home sales rose by 0.6%, yet reached the lowest July level on record at a seasonally adjusted annual rate of 4.1 million, down 2% year over year, which is this is interesting. So, in July, existing home sales rose by 6%, but in terms of what we expect in July, July is one of the biggest moving months of the year. We're in the height of summer, kids are out of school. That's typically when families look to relocate if they're going to. So usually June and July are like, that's the season. That's the busy time for relocating and for buying and selling real estate. And it's still down 2% year over year. So as opposed to last July, it's down. So the overall turnover of homes is still a little bit lower, but that doesn't mean that home sales are stagnant, because they rose by 0.6% in July comparison to the previous month. Pending sales also declined, falling 3% month over month and 6% year over year, marking the largest drops in nearly a year. So pending sales are a little bit different than existing home sales. Existing home sales are when home sales actually close, the transaction has gone its full course. Someone has sold it, another person has bought it, the transaction is closed, and they move on. Pending sales are exactly what it sounds like. It's sales in escrow. So it's kind of like new sales, sales that have opened up but have yet to have closed, and that fell 3%. And that could be for a variety of reasons. It is an election year. People typically kind of sit tight when there's an election year because they don't know what presidential candidate is going to win. They don't know how that will affect monetary policy, how that will affect interest rates, how that will affect the economy overall. And also there's like geopolitical things too, right? Like depending on what president we get. And I'm not just talking about Kamala or Trump, any election cycle, like, how will one candidate affect the geopolitical sphere as opposed to another one, which can create a huge outcome on our global economy. So it's not super rare for the July, August, and September leading up to the elections to be a little bit stymied because people are kind of taking the wait and see approach. Home prices remain close to their peak, just 0.7% below record highs, which discouraged some buyers despite a recent dip in mortgage rates. So there we have it. It's very interesting. We have a dip in mortgage rates, but we have a 0.7% increase in the record highs. So not quite record highs, but 0.7% of that. So still very close. So we have this kind of weird, we're in this weird spot where we have interest rates that are receding a little bit, but home prices that are still going. And again, those home prices are buoyed by places that will almost always be hot in real estate unless there's a major economic shift. So those areas would be places like on your coast. So San Diego, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, Portland, New York, Connecticut. The Northeast is very hot right now. New Jersey, I have a good agent friend, a big YouTuber, Jackie Baker. I go on her live streams. She's an agent in New Jersey, and she's just like, yeah, stuff is selling like, it's like, people are lined up to get into an open house. So it's kind of back in that. So some of those highly coveted areas where inventory is still suppressed is kind of buoying that average US sales price. But areas like Boise, Austin, lots of areas of Texas, areas in Mississippi, Florida, some areas of Georgia, they are seeing some softening in pricing. So if you're a really deal conscientious buyer, maybe you work remotely, maybe you're a retiree and you're looking to make that budget go further, those might be the areas you want to watch. But you can't just worry about price. You also have to factor in insurance and also property taxes, because property taxes in Texas can get out of hand. Here in California, we have a 2% cap. So my property taxes as a California homeowner, they can only go up a maximum of 2% per year, which is nice. Yes, property taxes will always go up, but at least it's at a pace where it's like, okay, I can kind of get used to this. So Lucy Fines, how is the LA County market? Well, the LA County market, the short answer to your question is it's all over the place, right? Because LA County is a ginormous county. And I'm glad you asked this question, because in some areas across the United States, agents will kind of break up property activity based on county, city, or even a region of the state, right? So LA County is a huge county. It's not the biggest, but it's one of the most populous. There's about 10 million people in LA County. And it varies from your beach cities. So like Pacific Palisades, Malibu, all that stuff, that's technically LA County. And it goes all the way to me. And I'm considered in the boonies out here in East LA County. Overall, LA and the LA County market, it's an extremely desirable place to live still. We still have a low amount of inventory. So there definitely is a supply crunch. And overall, if you have a house that is appropriately priced and it's presented well, you should not have any issue selling it if you're in the selling position. There's a good chance you'll still get multiple offers, and there's still a pretty good chance that you'll even be able to get above the asking price. Again, that's if you price the property correctly to begin with and you present it well. People are finding out that like if you overprice the property, it can scare off some buyers, because buyers are still, they're still kind of tight with the affordability. So not a lot of houses are sitting on the market in the greater LA County area. If it's priced well, it moves well. If it's overpriced, it's not going to get as much attention. But LA is a very coveted place to live, whether that's the West Side or whether that's out here towards me where there's a little bit more value. Overall, pretty good schools, pretty good quality of life. A lot of people might beg to differ on the replay. There's going to be some people probably that are not from California that beg to differ with that. But nonetheless, we have a lot of people. We don't have a lot of houses. The market still continues to be pretty warm. So hopefully that answers your question, Lucy. That's a good one. So we talked about home prices remaining near their peak, 0.7% below record highs. Notably, nearly 60,000 purchase agreements were canceled, comprising 16% of contracts, an all-time high for July. This was an interesting stat, and this made headlines. And in fact, some of my YouTube colleagues did their live streams and videos about the huge number of canceled contracts. Now, you might ask, well, why are contracts being canceled? First off, let's talk about what a canceled contract is. So contract, purchase agreement, offer, it's all kind of in that same vein, right? So when you go to offer on a property as a buyer, you have a certain period to do what's called your due diligence. Of course, this can be negotiated. This can be shortened. It can be elongated. It can even be eliminated, but I would highly, highly discourage against that, because when you eliminate your due diligence period as a buyer, you're really taking a risk. So during this due diligence period, buyers can oftentimes cancel the transaction for a huge number of reasons. The most common one is they have a home inspection and they realize there's major issues. You know, the home needs a new roof. It needs to be completely replumbed. Maybe there's foundation issues. Maybe the HVAC's completely shot and it's going to need, $30,000 to get it up to speed. And a lot of buyers, they don't want to deal with it. They don't want to inherit those problems. So contracts cancel. 60,000 agreements being canceled, which is 16% of all the contracts in July. That's a huge number. And this kind of set off a few little alarm bells for some people. This shows that consumer confidence is a little bit lower in the home sector, not necessarily in the overall financial market, but when it comes to buying and selling properties, this is a little bit of a red flag. Why did this happen? I don't know. That's a great question. Maybe some people cancel their contracts because they think interest rates are going to lower. And if they locked into a high interest rate in July, maybe like, hey, you know what? We'll just wait a month or two. Maybe Jerome Powell and the Fed's going to lower rates. Then we don't have to worry about refining. We don't have to go, because you have to pay to refi and you have to meet certain qualifications to refi. So it's possible that maybe people are trying to kind of game the interest rate market a little bit, but it's really hard to know. On a positive note, the supply of homes for sale increased by 14%, providing buyers with more options and room for negotiation, although many listings have become stale. Even though listings have become stale, any increase in inventory, honestly, is a good thing. As a real estate agent, a lot of people out there think that I don't want a lot of inventory because it keeps prices high. It keeps people, voracious when it comes to properties. I, as well as many other good real estate agents out there, want to see inventory levels increase because it's going to alleviate a lot of pressure on buyers. Where we are right now is not a good spot. Yes, it's great if you're a seller, but 84% of sellers turn into home buyers. So, it might be good for you right now, but it's going to be bad for you in the long term. And overall, home ownership and real estate is like the bedrock of the American economy. It's the bedrock of the American dream. And quite honestly, it needs to level out, and we need to be able to give the ordinary person an opportunity to afford an ordinary home. And by increasing levels of inventory, those odds go up. So David asks, Joe, do you have new construction in your market? That's a great question, David. And in my market, there is new construction, but because of suburban sprawl and LA living, we don't have a whole lot of available land left to develop. So a lot of the new construction is actually happening a little bit further east, out in what's called the Inland Empire, San Bernardino County. There's a ton of available land in San Bernardino County. San Bernardino County is immediately to the east of me. In fact, if I just go one city over to the east, I am in Upland, which is San Bernardino County. So I am right on the border of LA County and San Bernardino County. San Bernardino County is actually the largest county that we have in the United States by landmass. So it's a huge county that actually goes all the way to the Arizona border. So it's a huge county, lots of land, and there is a lot of building and new construction going on out there. However, in my direct market, you might see some new construction projects where they found, they found a site that maybe was a vacant, a half acre or 1 acre vacant lot that, somebody owned for a long time. They never developed. A developer buys it and is able to put up, 18 units or 27 units or 35 units. We don't have any mega developments going on. I know that's big in Texas. I know that's big in other areas, kind of in the Midwest and the South. Maybe in Nebraska. David, do you have a lot of new construction out there? What's new construction looking like in your area? For me, not a whole lot. It's just kind of here and there, little pockets, not enough to alleviate the inventory crisis. Yeah, it is tough. Yeah, exactly. Jackie's in a similar market I am, highly densified near a major city, just not a whole lot of new construction. It's kind of here and there, but just not a common thing. In fact, most sales in my area are resale. They're not new construction. I'd say maybe probably less than 5% in my market is new construction. I've shown new construction. I've had new construction buyers, but I've never actually even sold a new construction. But process, as you know, isn't much different. Very lucky with plenty of new construction. That's good because that's going to increase the inventory in your area, right? It's going to give your buyers some options, should help keep some pricing low. And as we know, new builders are quick to offer incentives. So quite likely, maybe your buyers can get some upgrades, right? Upgraded flooring, upgraded tile, upgraded countertop, whatever it may be. Maybe they're going to do an interest rate buy down. Maybe if your buyer uses their preferred lender, they're going to get some closing costs paid for. So there are some huge advantages to having some new construction, obviously in your area. Expert analysis and forecast. So Fannie Mae's senior president, by the way, Fannie Mae is a federal lending outfit to a lot of people get their loan through. If you have an FHA loan, it's a Fannie Mae loan. Their senior vice president and chief economist, Doug Duncan, suggests that the market will likely face continued affordability constraints due to these high prices and interest rates. So 1-2 punch, a double whammy. However, there is an anticipation of an increase in home sale transactions compared to the previous year, projected to be around 4 to 6% growth, with a slower rise in home prices. This indicates a potential stabilizing trend rather than a radical market shift. And I'll tell you what, David, I know that you're an agent. You might agree with me. One thing we need right now in the real estate market is stabilization, right? No more radical shifts, no more radical up and downs, no more crazy, pandemics or please no geopolitical conflict, right? We don't need any major wars or conflicts. We just need things to settle. And I'm not just saying that as a real estate agent, right? I'm faced with buyers every day. My friends, my family, they come to me and they go, Joe, like, when am I going to get some relief? And I tell them it's tough. It's just tough right now. The affordability is it's the worst it's ever been by far. So it's good to know that Fannie Mae is kind of projecting some stabilizing, home prices should rise, but they shouldn't rise in a crazy amount every year. We need some stabilization. It's going to be better for everyone. Buyers, sellers who become buyers. It's just better for everyone. Other market analysts predict a gradual thaw in the market with added challenges. Their forecasts suggest that as mortgage rates slowly fall, projected to decrease by as much as 0.5% in late 2024, which is possible. Jerome Powell just had the big meeting in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Today he came out, didn't really say anything either way, which I'm so glad. The financial market, Wall Street, the mortgage market, if Jerome Powell even whispers like the hint that there's going to be a rate cut, they go crazy. The rumor mill in the financial market is insane. It's like worse than being in high school, right? Like a rumor back in high school gets out and like before the end of fifth period, like everybody knows this rumor that's fake. Wall Street about interest rates is like even worse. It's terrible. Like if they just get a whiff that something might happen. So Jerome doesn't want to incite any panic, whether that's positive or negative. So over the last year, he's been very kind of stoic and general in all of his talks and his speeches and sort of his thoughts, which is probably a good thing. But we do know that the Fed is likely going to do an interest rate cut in September, and it's probably going to be for 0.5%. So that's why that they're projecting to decrease by as much as 0.5% by late 2024. More buyers and sellers will enter the market, stabilizing housing prices. This stability is expected to be influenced by various factors, including demographic shifts. We've talked about this one. Demographics, that's the unrelenting thing that will never change, right? It's like the tide of the ocean. It's like the sun rising and setting. Demographics has to do with the study and breakdown of groups of people and populations. So the increasing participation of millennials in the housing market is expected to create additional demand. This is one huge reason. Back in like this time last year, I made a video about why we're not going to see a 2008 market crash. And this is one of the things that's like the biggest thing. We have a huge number of millennials. Millennials are the biggest generational group that we've ever had. We are, I say we because I'm a millennial, and we are in our prime home buying years. And those prime home buying years are being pushed back a little bit further. It used to be in your early 30s. Now it's shifting to your later 30s. So what's happening is that millennial like power band of home buying is only going to elongate as it gets pushed back further. So this idea that like millennials like don't want to own a home, they don't want to own anything, like we just want to be digital nomads and we're minimalists and stuff, like maybe that's how it was previously, but every millennial I know or talk to, which I know and talk to a lot because they're all my friends and many of them are my clients, they all want to be able to buy a house. Very, very few like want to rent. There's a couple of them, and those I find that the people that want to rent are people that need to be mobile, right? So maybe they're not committed to like their career, or they do have a career that they're committed to, and that career is like, hey, we might need you in New York in 2 years, or we might need you in Texas in a year, or we might need you somewhere else, and they don't feel that it's a right time for them to buy a home. But generally speaking, millennials want to buy homes. If I have any millennials watching, chime in, let me know, how do you feel when people tell you like, have you read on the news, like, oh, millennials don't want to buy homes? Like, how do you feel about that? And do you eventually want to own a home one day? I'd love to know. Climate change impacts. Population movements driven by climate change may affect housing demand in different regions, like, which is true, right? We're seeing this right now. A lot of people in Florida are having their homeowners insurance policies canceled. And then when they go to renew them, it's like 3 times as much. Same thing's happening in like areas like Mississippi, New Orleans, these areas that are really heavily affected by hurricanes and storms and flooding. Those areas, are right to see people go, you know what, like I can afford my house, but I can't afford the insurance. I can't afford to keep fixing my house after all of these natural disasters, partially, due in part to the climate shifting. I'm going to pick up and I'm going to move to Arizona, or I'm going to move to, somewhere, where there's less natural disasters. Insurance might be a little bit more affordable, because this is basically running me out of my house. So between demographic shifts and climate change impacts, certainly those two things are going to kind of keep that market churning and rolling over. Zillow's latest forecast, July of 2024, aligns with the notion of a stable market, projecting a modest 1.2% decrease in home values nationally. Now, if a crash bro got a hold of this, they would say, oh, Zillow indicates housing crash. Okay, 1.2% declines in valuation across the nation is not going to upset anything. It's really not going to make a huge difference to buyers, although it's going to be some relief, right? Any relief for a buyer right now is good relief. And quite frankly, with housing prices and valuation going up 10 and 15% each year over the last several years, a 1.2% decrease is probably going to be welcomed by most people, not property owners or sellers, but 1.2% is nothing to get up in arms about. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. Yeah, there you go, David. We are seeing a huge increase in homeowners insurance premiums, hail, tornadoes, flooding. Yep. And the demographic that hits those premium increases the most are those living on a fixed income. So retirees, older people, maybe people that are on disability from work, or have a layoff or something like that. They might be able to afford the same house payment that they've had for 15, 20 years, or maybe they don't have any house payment, right? And they own it free and clear. But imagine if their insurance went from $1,000 a year to $4,000 a year. Like, how would that affect things, right? And if you're on a fixed income or you're retired, imagine if you had a cost that went up 4 times, right? And a big cost, not from $4 to $16. We're talking about from $1,000 to $4,000. Like, it's going to make a huge, huge difference. It's crazy. And that could cause people to move. This slight dip indicates a trend towards market stability rather than a sharp decline. Furthermore, regional markets are expected to exhibit varying degrees of activity. Cities experiencing job growth and affordability may see a slight uptick, whereas areas where prices have surged without corresponding economic growth may experience price corrections, like a la Austin, Texas, right? Like huge growth, huge boom during the pandemic. And now, Austin's a great town, but now they're at the point where it's like, okay, everybody came here and drive the prices up, but there's no like huge economic benefit. They've had some, major corporations move there, but not a ton. And I know a lot of the local longtime Austin people are like, get out, like leave, all you transplants, get out of here. Some forecasts offer a more optimistic view, predicting that prices will begin to rise again in most US cities, albeit at a slower pace that reflects historical norms, around 3 to 5% annual growth expected in markets like Austin and Nashville. This suggests that while some markets may experience a rebound, others that have seen a more significant downturn, like San Francisco, New York City, might take longer to recover. And if we can get back to that normal 3 to 5% growth, that's going to be better for everyone. Again, we need stability right now. We don't need a market crash. We certainly don't need the market to boom. We need stability. I know that there's people out there. I'll probably get them in the comments on the replays of this video. Oh, Joe, we do need a market crash. Like that's what we need. We need the market to crash. Now, I understand why there's people out there that think we need that and that want the market to crash, right? Because they want to buy real estate. There are people that have been priced out. There are people that can't afford to buy. There are people that can't afford to purchase where they work. And I get it. I understand it. I sympathize with that thought process. However, what people don't realize is when there's a real estate market crash, it's usually brought on by other larger factors, like a major recession, a major war, the economy seriously having something go wrong. And when that happens, it's not a good thing. And these people that are on the sidelines rooting for a housing crash, they are likely to be affected by the implications of that housing crash. So if the economy tanks and there's a ton of job loss, right, that could lead to a housing crash. But if the people waiting for the housing crash lose their jobs, well, they're not going to be able to purchase, right? Not to mention that it wreaks havoc on people's retirements. The older generations, it hurts them. So we don't ever want a housing crash. Do we want affordability to be a little bit more reasonable and realistic? And do we want affordability to increase? Absolutely. But I don't think we want a housing crash. Potential appreciation and regional variations. Regional variations is two key words there. Again, real estate, hyperlocal. Looking ahead to 2024 through 2028, moderate appreciation in the housing market is anticipated, with significant regional disparities emerging. The southern region, particularly states like Florida and Texas, is expected to see substantial home price growth, projected 6 to 8% annual increase. Interesting. Fueled by job creation and an influx of residents seeking lower costs of living, which is true. We've heard a lot of people, I'm leaving California and I'm going to Texas. It's lower cost of living. I'm leaving California, I'm going to Nashville. Lower cost of living. So I see where that makes sense. Conversely, northern states could see much slower growth or even stagnation in prices, depending on demographic trends and local economies. For instance, markets in the Midwest may find it challenging to maintain their previous growth rates due to a lack of job opportunities and migration. Again, so this just goes back to like real estate being hyperlocal. And what happens in one area might not translate exactly to another area, which is why you need to seek a local expert whenever you are looking to get insightful real estate knowledge or buy or sell a property. And if you do need a local real estate expert in your market, let me know. I have a huge network of real estate agents that I know and work with all over the country. So if you're someone, doesn't matter where you are, whether you're in Texas, Florida, Washington State, Washington, DC, I have agents that can help you and expertly guide you through the process, whether you're buying, selling, looking at an investment, doesn't matter. You can drop a comment below. I've got a link in the description. You can click that, learn more, reach out to me. I can get you set up with someone. Wage growth and lower rates would go a long way towards affordability. Absolutely, wage growth being a huge one that we need, along with easing restrictions for more affordable housing options. Yes, absolutely. There's a ton of red tape. There's a ton of bureaucracy in the real estate development sector. Doesn't matter where you go. It is just hard to develop real estate. Some states have made laws that kind of relax it a little bit. Here in California, we have a thing called builder's remedy, which is basically when a builder, a real estate developer, if they conform to the current zoning that the lot is in that they're developing, and if they meet basic building criteria, they basically have the green light and can start building. They don't have to get public input. They don't have to get approval from the city council. They don't have to do any of that. Some people hate it. Some people like it. It does take some local power away, which a lot of people don't like, but it does expedite the process of building, and it makes it easier and quicker. And in the world of finance, time is money. So you're exactly right about that. Easing restrictions with more affordable housing options would certainly help. One thing that I think is a big thing is we got to get rid of this mandatory minimum mandatory square footage, both in lot size and in livable square footage. For a long time, you couldn't build a livable unit under 800 square feet, at least in my county. And that needs to go. We need to get some smaller units because there might be a single person out there or a couple that is like, hey, listen, we only need 400 or 500 square feet. We'd love to be able to purchase it, start building equity, right? And we'd love to stop paying rent, but there's nothing like that available. It's very difficult to find small units for purchase. The other thing that would do is that would allow people in large homes, say a 2,000 square foot home, maybe it's an older person, an older single person, man, woman, doesn't matter. And they go, you know what? I don't want to take care of this 2,000 square foot home. I don't want to take care of this yard. I don't want to pay for electricity. I'm on a fixed income. I just want to find a little 600 or 700 square foot property, but I still want my independence. I still want to have a little backyard. I want to have a little space for my doggy or my cat. And, I'm not ready for an old folks home. I don't want a condo. It would be great if we had some smaller, single family type setups that could make it easier for people to downsize, because then what that does is now these people put up their 2,000 square foot home. And imagine if we had 3 or 4 or 5 of those go up in every city, we'd solve some of that inventory crisis. Real estate's a chain reaction. You get one person to move, likely someone else is going to move, someone else is going to move, so on. Factors that could influence a housing market crash in 2024. The stability of the housing market is a topic of significant interest and concern for homeowners, investors, and policymakers alike, especially policymakers right now with Harris and Trump going at it. As we look ahead to 2024, several factors could potentially lead to a downturn in the housing market. Understanding these factors is crucial for anyone involved in the real estate sector. So number one, rising interest rates. One of the primary concerns is the possibility of rising interest rates. The Federal Reserve has been incrementally increasing rates to combat inflation, which could lead to even higher mortgage rates and consequently a decrease in housing affordability. This could result in reduced demand for homes, as potential buyers may find it increasingly challenging to secure financing. Now, do we need to worry about rising interest rates? Probably not. Most likely interest rates are going to go down. They'll be a little bit more favorable for buyers. However, at any time, we could get some economic data. At any time, there could be geopolitical events that cause the economy to freak out a little bit, and interest rates might not decrease or they might increase. It's probably not likely, but it could happen, and that would certainly be a problem for the real estate market. High inflation. Inflation itself is another factor impacting the housing market. Currently at a 40-year high, inflation erodes consumers' purchasing power, making it more difficult for them to afford homes at current prices. When your dollar gets less and less valuable and home prices stay the same or go up, it makes the burden even harder to purchase a home. Although wages have seen increases, they haven't kept pace with inflation, further straining the home buying potential for many middle-class families across the country. And that's what we need to stimulate. The middle class needs to be able to purchase middle-class homes. And if we can do that, then we're going to be able to shore up the economy, stabilize the housing market, and it's going to be better for everyone. Economic recession risk. A potential recession is also a concern that economists are warning about. If the U.S. economy were to enter a recession in 2024, it could lead to job losses and decreased consumer confidence, significantly reducing the demand for housing. Analysts note that jobless claims have already shown signs of increasing, which could forecast economic trouble ahead. I think personally, this is our biggest one, right? I think this is the biggest one that we have to kind of keep in mind and maybe not worry about, but keep tabs on. If anything, this is going to be the one, right? If any of these reasons are the most likely, I think it's going to be this. I don't know if we're going to have a bona fide recession. The Fed actually has done a pretty good job of keeping us out of one, but we're still kind of walking on glass with this subject. Household debt levels. The level of household debt is another critical factor, with mortgages, credit cards, and student loans leading the way. Household debt has recently surpassed $17 trillion. High levels of debt can limit consumers' ability to take an additional mortgage debt, potentially slowing down the housing market. A Harvard study indicated that nearly 40% of renters cost burden, spending more than 30% of their income on housing costs. Supply chain disruptions. Oh God, I don't want to hear about supply chains. I've heard enough about supply chains from COVID that I don't need to hear about supply chains again for basically as long as I walk this earth. Supply chain disruptions, along with rising labor and construction material costs, have been identified as contributing factors to sustained real house price gains. COVID-19 has caused persistent supply chain problems, with the cost of materials like lumber and steel surging. These issues could exacerbate the affordability crisis and even lead to a market correction if not addressed. I don't think this one is as much of a factor. Maybe 2 years ago, yes, not so much now. We've kind of got the supply chain thing figured out, but COVID and the supply chain was a really good example of how interconnected our economies are, how much globalization has really taken over, and how much everybody kind of depends on everyone else. The supply chain is rather fragile. I mean, you get a couple disruptions in the supply chain, and all of a sudden, like, stuff just stops showing up, right? And that's not a good thing. When stuff stops showing up, we have a supply issue. If demand remains the same, prices on those goods go up, leading to inflation, leading to consumers not having money to afford housing. Economic fundamentals deteriorating. The housing market's connection to economic fundamentals is a point of analysis. When the market becomes detached from fundamentals, which it kind of is, such as shifts in disposable income and the cost of credit, it can lead to speculative bubbles. If many buyers operate under a fear of missing out, called FOMO, mentality, and drive up prices, this can heighten expectations of strong house price gains and potentially result in a bubble burst. FOMO is one of the things that Crash Bros and the Crash Bro segment love to blame. They go, oh, people, it's all FOMO buyers. People are just buying at crazy prices because they don't want to be left behind in home ownership. I don't really think that is, maybe for some buyers, they purchased a property because of fear of missing out. I don't think a majority of people are rushing into a 30-year mortgage, putting $100,000 or $200,000 down, committing to a $600,000 or $700,000 or $800,000 or more loan because they don't want to be left out. I just don't think people make huge financial decisions like that. Maybe when it comes to like driving a fancy car and I don't want to be left behind in the status quo or my image, okay, maybe that. Maybe going out and buying an expensive purse, okay, I don't want to be left out of that. When it comes to housing, I just don't think that's a reasonable scapegoat. Regional disparities. Lastly, regional disparities could play a role. While some areas may see substantial home price growth, others that have experienced significant downturns might take longer to recover. This uneven growth can create pockets of instability within the broader market. Conclusion. In summary, while the term crash may not accurately describe the state of the U.S. housing market in 2024, it is clear that the market is undergoing a period of adjustment. Both those things I agree with. The consensus among experts points towards a market that is stabilizing and adapting to new economic conditions rather than collapsing. Sorry, Crash Bros. As always, potential home buyers and sellers should stay informed, pay attention to macroeconomic indicators, and consider their individual circumstances when navigating the housing market. Engaging with real estate professionals and staying abreast on market trends can provide further insight into making informed decisions during these uncertain times. I want to go back and hit this one more time. Consider their individual circumstances when navigating the housing market. That's a huge one, right? Like, a lot of people like to say, oh, realtors are going to try to get you to buy a home no matter what. They're always going to say it's a good time to buy a house. No. You know when the good time to buy a house is? When you can afford it, right? When you can afford the property, when you saved enough for the down payment, when you feel like your living situation, your family situation, your job situation is stable, and you find something you like, that's when you should buy a house. That's when you should buy it. You shouldn't worry about the interest rate. You shouldn't worry about if prices are at all-time highs. If you can afford it, if it makes sense for you, if it makes sense for your family, that's when you should do it. So individual circumstances is, like, to me, the biggest one. Don't worry about anything else. Buy a house when you feel like it's the right time for you based on what you're doing. So, this article talks about, being on the brink, crash or boom, kind of breaks it down nicely. Honestly, I really don't think we're on the verge of a crash. Again, sorry, Crash Bros. I don't think we're on the verge of a boom. I think we're on the verge of the market stabilizing a lot. I think we're going to start to see more normal price growth. I think we're going to start to see interest rates be a little bit more reasonable, but we'll just have to take this 1 month at a time, right? That's when the data gets released every month. New housing data, new economic data gets released, and we'll just have to see, how it pans out. So when it comes to the real estate market being on the brink, I don't think it's on the brink of crash or boom. I do think it's on the brink of major change, which takes me to my next article about home buyers now have to negotiate agent fees up front, upending how the real estate industry has worked for decades. So unless you've been living under a rock, you've probably seen some news stories about a huge shakeup in the real estate world in terms of agent commissions, which is how agents are paid. There was a huge class action lawsuit. The Department of Justice got involved. National Association of Realtors got sued. All sorts of stuff. It's kind of complicated. There's still a lot of news and details that are like being finalized and being, sussed out. But basically, things are changing with how real estate agents are being compensated. Let's take a look. Home buyers will now need to negotiate how much they pay their real estate agent before starting their home search. A rule change that's upended new home purchasing has worked for decades. The change, effective August 17th, so as of last Saturday, comes from a court settlement involving the National Association of Realtors. Traditionally, both buyers and sellers' agent commissions of 5 to 6% of the home price were paid by the seller using the sale proceeds. Now buyers must negotiate and pay their agent fees separately. Okay, so a couple things I want to address right away here. This idea, 5 to 6%. First off, while that may have sort of been the average, real estate commissions have always been negotiable. I've seen agents sell properties for as low as 2 and 3%. I've seen it go all the way up to 7, 8, 9%. It really just depends. I've seen agents try to sell a property for 1%. I've seen agents operate on a flat fee model before, where it's just like, oh, just pay me $5,000 and I'll sell your house. So the idea that, like, it's always been either 5% or 6%, that's a misnomer. The news outlets love to run with that. It's not true. This idea that, the home price paid for by the seller using the sale proceeds, that's also kind of a misnomer, because yes, the seller pays it out of their proceeds, but without the buyer obtaining that mortgage, there is no sale proceeds. So it's kind of like a chicken or the egg, right? Like what comes first? Who's paying for what? If the buyer is bringing in all of this cash via their mortgage and giving it to the seller to buy the house, and the seller turns around and gives some of that money to the buyer's agent, who really paid, right? Who's really responsible for paying, right? So David, it seems like each state is rolling out with slightly different rules and regs. And some of you're exactly correct. The DOJ and the NAR kind of set like this loose framework for what they're looking to see. Every state being completely different with the way that it works. Some states are fighting back. Some agents in Michigan are suing back and saying like, well, then why are we even a part of NAR? Why are we even doing this? I believe it was Colorado that said, we're not doing it. We're not going to follow one segment of the new rule, which is that we'll get to shortly, that says that buyers have to sign an agreement before they can even go with their agent to look at the home. So regardless of whether or not they're even going to buy it or put an offer or try to buy it, they now what the lawsuit said is that across the nation now, if you want to go look at a home and you want to go look at it with a real estate agent, you have to sign a contract, which is new. That's completely new. So some states are fighting that. Some states are making a law. In California, it's going to be a law starting January. So yes, that's one thing that also contributes to sort of the hecticness and uncertainty of these new rule changes, is that it's going to vary widely from state to state. Hey, Michelle, as if buying a home could be more hard for buyers now that they come with the extra cash for their realtor. Rough. Yes, that's true. There's some ways to get around that. It is true that buyers could potentially be on the hook to pay their agents. Now, what it's looking like is it's going to be a little bit more negotiable, but the buyer is going to have to agree to be on the hook if the event that the seller says, I'm not going to pay for it. Now, I'll give some examples as we get to the article, but yeah, you are correct. It is now looking like buyers certainly could be in the position where they're going to have to come up with cash to compensate their agent. And you might think, oh, well, now what that does is, buyers could have the potential to get a real estate agent that's cheaper, more affordable. Yes, I'll tell you, you get what you pay for, right? And I'm sure there's real estate agents out there that will do it for bargain basement pricing. There are agents out there that will be quick to discount fees and get their fees much, much lower. I'll tell you what, just like an attorney, just like many, many other things in life, you get what you pay for. And when you're embarking on the purchase or sale of probably your largest asset, you probably don't want a bargain basement representative, i.e. your buyer's or seller's agent. So keep that in mind when you're shopping around. The new rules open up an array of payment options for buyer's agents. These include the traditional payout from the seller as a percentage of the purchase price, or a flat fee, or an hourly rate. These two sentences I could talk about for, 8 hours probably. I'm not going to do that because I don't think you guys want to listen to me talk for that long. But these new rules don't open up an array of payment options. Those have always been payment options, right? This new ruling didn't say like, oh, now this is acceptable. Now you can do it this way. You could always do it that way before. You could always go up to your real estate agent and say, hey, I don't want to do a structure where it's a percentage of the sales price. I'm just going to pay you a flat fee. I'm just going to pay you 10 grand and you're going to work for me and that's it. Or you could do an hourly rate. I'll tell you what, an hourly rate I think is a terrible idea for consumers, not necessarily for the agent. I would almost like to be paid hourly because then I know at least I'm going to be paid whether or not you buy or sell a home. You're going to pay me either way, which is not the case, which is not the way that it works right now. Right now, if you don't close on a home as a buyer or seller, you don't pay your agent. And if I worked in an hourly platform, I would get paid regardless. The reason I think it's bad for a consumer to go to an hourly model is that I think that is going to make the consumer second guess whether or not they actually want the advice from the real estate agent. For example, right now, when my clients have a question, I encourage them to call me, text me, email me, send me a carrier pigeon. I don't care. Ask me your questions as soon as you get them, right? Because the more questions you ask, the more answers you get, the more knowledge you have. Knowledge is power. The smoother the process is going to be. However, if you're on an hourly model and a client goes, "Ooh, you know what? I have a question about home inspections and how that works. You know, and I need to ask my agent this question." They're going to think, "Oh, actually, you know what? Before I do that, if I call my agent, he's going to bill me. He's going to bill me for this phone call, whether or not it's 1 minute, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, or 40 minutes. It doesn't matter. Oh, you know what? If I send a text message to my agent, he's going to bill me for that. Do I really want to pay, $10 or $15 or $20 for the answer to this question, you know what? No, I'm just going to consult Google, or my favorite, I'm going to look on Reddit. Now you're going to start to go to Reddit for your advice on buying or selling a house. I don't think an hourly model is good for consumers at all. I think it's good for agents. I don't think it's good for consumers. Buyers will really have to take their time and really vet their agent before signing a buyer broker agreement. That is true. And that's one of the good things, right? Now buyers aren't just going to fall, backwards into a real estate agent. Oh, hey, I called this guy off of Zillow to show me a house. Now he's my real estate agent. I don't know anything about him. I don't know if he's ever sold a house before. I don't even know if he's any good at what he does, but he answered the phone and now I'm working with him. Well, now with buyer broker representation agreements, it will encourage buyers to vet their representation much better, which for good agents out there like you and me, David, I think it's actually going to help us quite a bit. So good point. On one hand, buyers have much more flexibility in negotiating how much they pay for an agent. On the other hand, the options can be confusing for home buyers who aren't sure what they should do. Here's an overview of what to know about the new rules. You still might need a buyer's agent. A lot of people go, oh, buyer's agents are going away. Buyer's agents aren't going to get paid from this. That is absolutely incorrect, not true. While you might be able to save money by avoiding a buyer's agent altogether, it's probably not a good idea unless you have experience buying properties. In fact, 9 out of 10 home buyers work with an agent because they offer local market expertise, assist in finding listings that meet their needs, handle all the paperwork efficiently, and negotiate to secure the best possible price on their behalf, according to NAR data. So, of course, people want expert representation, especially when they're embarking on a huge purchase. Can you buy a house without an agent? Absolutely. Have people done it? Of course. Will it save you some money? Yeah, probably. But I also don't need to hire a plumber to repipe my house. I don't need to hire a contractor to add on to my house. I don't need to hire a mechanic to fix the brakes on my car. But do you hire those people? Yeah, probably. Why? Why? Because you value their expertise and you value your time, right? Your time as a consumer is valuable, right? So how much money and how much time is it going to cost you to try to learn how to repipe your house by yourself? How many mistakes are you going to make repiping your house? How much more material are you going to go through because you messed up, cutting the pipes or doing whatever? So sure, you can buy a house without an agent. Absolutely. Some people have good luck doing it, but that doesn't mean that that's the right thing for everyone. The agent who is education focused will thrive in this environment. You're 100% correct. If you take an educational based approach, you are absolutely going to thrive. I completely agree with you, David. When you hire a buyer's agent, you'll need to sign a written agreement first. This is one of the changes that we were talking about. So with the rule change, realtors, and this is probably one of the biggest parts about the rule change, more so than the commission, in my opinion. With the rule change, realtors representing buyers are required to have a written contract before they can start working on behalf of their clients. And that means working on behalf of their clients means showing properties, writing offers. So can you talk to an agent before you sign a contract? Absolutely. Can that agent send you some properties before you sign a contract? Absolutely. Can that agent set up a search for you and specifically look for properties and send them to you as they come up? Absolutely. But the moment you want to get into talk about writing an offer, or the moment you want to go see those properties in person, or even a virtual showing, if you want that agent to go to a listing and make a video for you or FaceTime you and show you the property, got to have a buyer's broker agreement for that. That's where it changes. A buyer's agent agreement, also known as a buyer representation agreement, also known as a buyer broker agreement, there's all sorts of names for it, should generally include the following. Terms of the agreement: specifies how long the contract will last, whether it's a few weeks or months. It should be signed by both buyer and agent. Here in California, our agreement can't last for more than 3 months. I think that's going to change. Most people can't find a house to buy in 3 months. Most of the time, the home buying process takes 4, 5, 6, 7 months. Heck, there's clients I've been working with for over 2 years, right? So I think that's going to change. I think they're going to extend that. 3 months is a really short amount of time. But there should be a start date and an end date, or day period or something like that. Compensation, the other big one. Whether that's a percentage of the sale price, a flat fee, or an hourly rate, it should state who is responsible for paying for it, whether it's the buyer, the seller, or both. And this is a big one. So a lot of times what's going to happen is buyers will have to sign one of these agreements and their agent's going to say, listen, I know you probably don't have X percent. Let's just say 2%. You don't have 2% to pay me my fee. But you know what? We're going to sign this agreement. You're going to acknowledge that my fee is 2%. But you know what I'm going to do is I am now going to negotiate on your behalf to get the seller to pay that fee. We're going to propose that the seller, we're going to bring them this great offer. It's going to have great terms, and we're going to propose that the seller pay the fee to me, your buyer's agent. Scope of services outlines what the agent will do: finding properties, setting up showings. Exclusive representation clause. Most buyer's agents agreements include a clause where the buyer agrees to work only with that agent for the duration of the contract. It is negotiable though. And this is a big thing. A lot of real estate agents are going to want to make sure that this is an exclusive agreement. After all, they're putting their time in, they're working for you, they're setting up showings, they're doing paperwork, they're writing offers, they're finding properties, they're, doing virtual showings, things like that. They're going to want to make sure that you're loyal to them. They're investing their time, energy, and expertise in you as a buyer, and they're going to expect that you're going to be committed to them. So don't be surprised if the agent that you're working with or looking to work with is going to want you to sign an exclusive representation agreement. Now, the good news is in a lot of these things, there is ways to get out of the agreement. So it's not like you're locked in forever to this person. Eventually it will expire, things like that. But that's going to come down to each individual brokerage and state contract. Talk to your agent about it. That's going to be something that you want to be very, very clear on before you sign. Cancellation policy. This is one thing I was just talking about. This can include a no-fault termination that lets either party walk away, usually within a couple of weeks. Legal compliance confirms that the agreement adheres to state and local laws, specifying jurisdiction. Confidentiality clause states that any personal or financial information shared remains confidential. Dual agency disclosure. Dual agency is not in every state. Dual agency means that the agent representing the seller is also representing the buyer. So one agent doing both things. It's not, in some states it's illegal. In a lot of states it's not. Every agent, every person has their own thought on dual agency. Some people absolutely hate it. Some people think it works fine. It's really a case-by-case basis, and it really depends on the buyer, the seller, and the case. You can't make a blanket statement whether it's good or bad, in my opinion. Amendments clause. This will explain how many changes to the agreement will be, or how any changes to the agreement will be handled. This could be important if you want to switch from an hourly rate or flat fee model to one which the seller pays your buyer's commission for a given listing. And then, of course, you got to have signatures. Joe, is dual agency legal in California? Yes, it is legal in California. We are a dual agency state. It is actually, I don't want to say it's common, but it's not rare, especially when the market heats up. A lot of buyers think they're going to get a better deal by working with the agent that represents the seller. I'll tell you, more times than not, you're not getting a better deal. You're going to get the same deal. And on top of that, you're not going to get as good representation. So I don't think, like I said, dual agency is a case-by-case basis. Sometimes it can be okay depending on the people and the property. Most of the time, though, you got to be careful because the agent has to give fiduciary duty, and fiduciary duty is almost impossible to give to two competing sides, right? It would be like if you there was a football game, right? And let's say the Rams are playing the Patriots, and everything is normal. Teams have their own quarterback, players, all stuff, but they shared a head coach, right? Like, how could that head coach each team to the fullest extent? It's really, really difficult to do that. But yes, in CA, dual agency is legal. With the rule change, will buyer's agents be cheaper to hire? It's not yet clear how the rule changes will affect the market for buyer's agents, but there's definitely more flexibility to negotiate. In the past, agents were requesting and requiring almost 6% of the total sales price. With the new rules, we could see this drop to 3% or 4% of the total sales price, says Armstead Jones, strategic real estate advisor at real estate platform House Cashin. They weren't requiring. This is categorically false. Real estate agents weren't requiring 6%. And if you had a home to sell and a real estate agent walked in and said, my fee is 6%, let's list your house, you could absolutely say, absolutely not. No, I'm not paying that. Get out. I'm not paying that. I'm going to go find something that's going to do it for 4 or 5%. So the fact that this requiring 6%, yes, maybe some agents require that for their service, right? But that doesn't mean that that's what you have to pay as the home seller. It's always been negotiable. And the funny part is with the new rules, we could see this drop to 3% or 4% of the total. So you're saying that as a listing agent walks in and they want to charge 6%. In the old way, that's what it was. Listing agent walked in, charged 6%, and maybe they gave half of it to the buyer's agent. Seller pays 6% total. Well, now listing agent's going to walk and say, oh, I only charge 3 or 4%. Isn't that better than 6? 3 or 4% is less than 6%, right, Mr. and Mrs. Seller? So I'm saving you money. But then what happens when the buyer submits the offer and the buyer goes, well, I can't pay for my agent because I am already stretched thin because I got to pay for the closing costs, the down payment. I'm going to have to get ready for taxes, all that stuff that goes into purchasing a property. I can't pay my agent. So Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I'm going to ask that you pay my agent's 2% fee. What's 4 plus 2? Anybody in the chat, give me 4 plus 2. Guess what that is? That's 6, right? So 6%, you're still in the same spot, right? So this idea that, oh, we could see it go from 6% to 3% total, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't. We are dual agency state 2 and possible to present 2 sides equally with opposing goals. I don't disagree there. I love that analogy. 1 coach coaching 2 opposing teams. Yeah, I just made it up on the spot too. I just thought of it. That's my own thing. Feel free to use it, right? When you're talking to people about dual agency, David, run with it, right? Use it. Go for it. Okay, that suggests a rate closer to 1.5% or 2% for buyer's agents. Yeah, 2% is, I got news for you. 2 to 2.5% was kind of the industry standard before. So going to 2%, really nothing new here. What might emerge is a tiered system of service with a premium all-inclusive service at the top end ranging from 2 to 3%, says Mike Hardy, managing partner of the Southwest region for Churchill Mortgage. This would be followed by more stripped down models for less, including an attorney type model offering hourly services for drafting purchase contracts or negotiating prices. I see slightly lower sales expenses across the board with these changes, just with more variation given some fee for service models will service and capture a segment of the market share, says Hardy. What form of payment for a buyer's agent should you choose, right? This is going to be dependent upon your specific situation. Yes, 6. You guys are right. 4 plus 2, 6. Look at that. Buyers and sellers in the same spot. It's crazy. This is a tricky one. If you're a savvy buyer comfortable with finding properties on your own, you might opt for reduced service to close an offer for a property, says Jones. This could be a smaller percentage of the purchase price, a flat fee, or an hourly rate. Again, I've got newsflash. This already happens. I'm dealing with this situation right now. I had very good clients come to me earlier this week and say, Joe, the house across the street from us is coming up for sale. We think we want to buy it. We know the seller wants to sell it. The seller has an agent. We've got a price in mind, and we want your advice, and then we want your help. And I said, okay, great. Well, because I don't have to go house hunting for you, because we don't have to go through all the first-time home buyer stuff, the huge education, how to get a loan, how much you need for your down payment. Maybe we need to do any credit improvement, things like that. We don't need to do any of that. We know the house you want. We know it's for sale. We know the price. We know who we're working with. I'm going to represent them for a heavily reduced commission, probably around 1%. So because I already know what's going on, it's going to be a little less time intensive. That's something that we worked out. So this idea that like, oh, you might be able to get a reduced percentage if the buyer finds their own house, that's already happening. That already has been happening. That is not abnormal. So a lot of this stuff that, of course, the news is taking this and saying like, oh, look, this is a new headline, new development, that's a shakeup. It's all this stuff. Really, it's not a lot new. The newest thing and the biggest difference is that buyers have to sign an agreement prior to going to look at a house. That's really the big thing. It's worth noting that a flat fee is typically used when the selling price is too low and the agent needs to ensure that they are compensated fairly, he says. That said, a flat fee could be used for limited pre-selected services, compared with a full suite of services offered in a commission-based segment. Yeah, that's true. Usually flat fee is used when people are buying properties that are like, $120,000 or even $40 or $50 or $60,000. There's properties, in Detroit, rundown homes that, people might be able to buy for 30 grand. Well, if an agent works for 3% of 30 grand, they're not making a whole lot of money. In fact, they're not even going to cover their costs. It's not going to be worth their time. So they might say, hey, just, pay me $2,000 and that's going to be my fee. So that's why when this article brings up, usually flat fee is reserved for lower priced properties. That's why. The downside, and this is where flat fee and hourly can get to be a problem, as I kind of mentioned earlier, the downside to a flat or hourly fee is that an agent might not be incentivized to go the extra mile in finding you a home the same way that they would for a percentage of the home sale. These pay models might also turn out to be inadequate for your home search needs, which can be hard to estimate or predict. Keep in mind, what if a real estate agent has client A over here, client A, looking for a 3-bed, 2-bath home, 1,800 square feet for under $600,000. And they're saying, hey, you know what, we'll pay you 2%. We'll give you 2% of the sales price. Go get us a home. And then client B over here says, I'm looking for a 3-bed, 2-bath home, 1,800 square feet. And I'm looking for under 600,000, but I'm only going to pay you a flat rate of $7,500. Okay. Well, as an agent, who do you think I'm going to work harder for? I'm going to work harder for the person that's going to make it more worth my time, pay me more money. Will I still send the property to both? Yeah, absolutely. But am I going to be more inclined to react quicker to the client that's going to compensate me more, that's going to pay me more? Yeah. I mean, just look at it in your own shoes. If you had a job that was going to pay you more money, would you pay more attention to that job? Would you give it more of your effort? You probably would, right? So keep that in mind when you're trying to nickel and dime your buyer's agent. As a buyer, you will need to investigate your options, compare services, and negotiate effectively to ensure you're getting the best value from an agent. And that's what it's about, getting the best value. Might not be saving the most money, it's getting the best value. Whatever you choose, there must be a clear and distinct value provided for what is being charged, says Hardy. So a lot of things being shaken up in the world, right? Like a lot of stuff going on. The real estate world on the brink of a lot of changes. This commission thing, honestly, my take is this. I think buyer representation agreements are good. I think they're good for consumers. I think they're good for agents. After all, when you go to list a house for sale, you sign a contract before it goes on the market. You sign a listing agreement. You know how much you're paying. You know what the duty of that listing agent is. They show you the marketing plan. They show you their testimonials. They showed you other houses that they've sold in your neighborhood. Buyers should have the very same thing. Buyers should be able to vet agents. They should be able to make sure that they're getting good value out of their agent before they agree to anything. And they should be able to figure out compensation. I think what's going to happen with the whole commission compensation thing, I think we're going to start to see just buyers submit in their offer, seller, I want you to pay X% to my agent. You as a seller are going to be on the hook, which by the way, the seller's money is coming from the buyer anyway, right? Like we talked about that. So who's really paying the buyer's agent after all? It's like the $100 million question. I think there's going to be more lawsuits about this. I think there's going to be more rule changes about this. I think that there's going to be just a lot of uncertainty that happens. So I really hope you guys enjoyed the stream. I hope you had a good time. David, thank you. Thanks for popping into the chat. I appreciate you. Thanks for sticking around for the whole stream. This is kind of a long one. Great insight, great questions. Come back, hang out anytime. And maybe in the future, I'll have to get you on the show and we can shoot the stuff together. So I hope you guys all enjoyed. If you're still watching, drop a like on the stream. It really helps me out. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. Turn that notification bell on so you get alerted whenever I go live or post a new video. If you need a real estate agent, whether it's in the LA area or the greater United States, I have a pinned comment in the video, in the description. There's a link. Reach out to me. I'm always happy to talk real estate. I'm always happy to help. I hope you have a great evening, and I will see you next week on the next live stream. See you later.